Latrobe. Latrobe is the city of firsts and legends. It is the city of my birth. It is a city on the outskirts of the Pittsburgh metro area and is home to over 8,000 people. Its district, known as the Greater Latrobe School District, sits nestled in a cozy area between Unity and Derry Township. It has an operational train service, working steel production, light industrial facilities, markets, restaurants, a hospital, as well as doctor's office, and Excella Square. Latrobe has an airport as well, which stages flights to Pittsburgh, as well as Myrtle Beach, and as well as Fort Lauderdale, just to name a few. But one must wonder, where did this vibrant city begin? Where did its origins take place? Well, perhaps in the 1700s during the 7 Years' War, when white men first crossed the Alleghenies into a region of Pennsylvania. They found heavy forests of chestnut and oak, teeming with game. The area was then populated by the Indians known as the Delaware, aka Lenape tribe, the Shawnee, the Seneca, and the Mingo, who lived here and hunted and fished. Loyal Hanning was one of the leading villages of the Delaware, which was located at the present site of Ligonier, Pennsylvania, just about 8 miles of where Latrobe is now located. The first white men appeared in the vicinity of Latrobe in 1750, when Christopher Gist was a surveyor. He was the first to give a detailed account of the area of western Pennsylvania and Ohio. At the onset of the French and Indian War, he accompanied young George Washington on missions into the Ohio country. The French and Indian War gave more white men a glimpse of the area surrounding the Ohio country. In 1758, General John Forbes cleared a road through the area en route from Philadelphia to present-day Pittsburgh. His soldiers erected Dagworthy's breastworks in an area known as Lawson Heights, just south of Latrobe. A few people settled permanently in the area before 1769, when Pennsylvania land offices were opened by Penn proprietaries, and as early as 1765, Christian Saxman was living east of Latrobe, near what is now McChesney Town, Pennsylvania, while John Proctor had a farm to the west between St. Xavier property and Unity Cemetery. Among the first land titles granted by the Commonwealth for Latrobe were those made by George Quark, who acquired the application rights of David and Samuel Sloan, and unto Samuel Sloan, who built the first house, what is now the city of Latrobe, the restored Lockery Blockhouse, and other early settlers in and near around Latrobe. Youngstown, Unity Township, were the Archibald Lockery, who settled here with his brother William and restored the blockhouse, which still stands today near the intersection of Route 30 and Pennsylvania State Route 981. William Findley, who served as the first congressman from the area, whose mill along the Loyalhanna and West Latrobe was the first industry within the present city. Henry Kuhn, whose land became the later site of St. Xavier, and George Ruffner, who led 5 German families from Berks County in eastern Pennsylvania to settle on the site of St. Vincent College as well. Joseph Baldridge built a mill in 1789 south of Latrobe, and Peter Tindall and Benjamin Beatty, veterans of the American Revolution, joined the growing settlement in the area and established their homesteads near Unity Cemetery. Due to the subsequent attacks from Native Americans, especially after the Battle of Bushy Run, which was located in Harrison City, Pennsylvania. During that battle on July 1763, a relief column of 500 British soldiers marched through, which is now the Allegheny Mountains and the Laurel Highlands, passed through Latrobe and Youngstown in order to reach Bushy Run to relieve the garrison there. When they got there, Indian scouts observed Bouquet's army marching west along Forbes Road and reported this to the Indians surrounding Fort Pitt. And on August 5th, around 1 p.m., part of the force besieging Fort Pitt ambushed the British column west of Bushy Run Station at Edge Hill. The British managed to hold their ground until after sunset, when the natives withdrew. Bouquet ordered a redoubt constructed on Edge Hill, and the British placed their wounded and livestock at the center of in the perimeter. The British then engaged the Native American forces in box formation to protect the wounded in the middle. According to one account, the Allied tribes attacked in the morning, but were themselves ambushed by the sentries relieved from their evening duty, with the surprise attack of the sentries from a flank and the frontal assault by the British column. This victory at Bushy Run for those settlers prompted the Native Americans to stop attacking settlements in the region, as long as the British were compelled to keep the settlements east of the Ohio River. It was this decision alone that helped cement its settlement in the region of the Laurel Highlands and help it to grow into what became Latrobe nearly 100 years later. After William Findlay had settled upon Latrobe during the Whiskey Rebellion, he had hoped his diplomacy would quell the uprising of settlers in western Pennsylvania. Although sympathetic to their plight, William Findlay was instrumental in securing amnesty to most of the rebels when George Washington arrived with his militia. And unlike many of his Democratic Republican counterparts in the early 1800s, he opposed slavery and refused to own any slaves at his family home and mill. As the new century began, the area that is now comprised of the city of Latrobe was divided by the Loyalhanna into Derry Township to the east and Unity Township to the west. Derry Township was named after a town in Derry, Ireland. These townships back then consisted almost exclusively of farms, with a few grist mills and sawmills in between. Nestled against the Chestnut Ridge, known as Piper Ridge, Youngstown was founded. The town was named after Alexander Young, whose first lot was recorded on November 25, 1815, in the recorder's office in Westmoreland County. There was dispute, however, to the name of the town over if it should be called Martinsburg or Youngstown. The name Youngstown was settled upon after it was founded that the town of Martinsburg had already existed in the Commonwealth. Youngstown, though, existed decades before Latrobe even came into existence. Youngstown's Tin Lizzie served as a hotel for a number of years and was one of the rest stops for George Washington during his trek through the Laurel Highlands, located along Forbes Road, which in the early 1800s was developed as the Turnpike Road. Youngstown became the marketplace and post office for the area, and by 1850, the farms comprising of present-day Latrobe were the Kirk Farm, which is in the center of town, and Walter Farm, which was located in First Ward south of the Loyalhanna, Toner Farm, which is also in First Ward, which is north of the Loyalhanna, Brinker Farm, which is between 3rd and 4th Ward, Bozart Farm, which is located in 5th Ward near Standard Steel, where Lehigh Specialty Melting is today, Saxman Farm as well, which was located above Lincoln Avenue, and the Chamber and Davidson's Farms, which was located in 6th Ward, in the area of the 1st Ward above the hospital, near what is now Lloydsville and Kramer Heights. On February 18, 1851, Thomas Kirk sold his 140-acre farm in Derry Township to Oliver Barnes, an agent of the Pennsylvania Railroad, which wanted to connect the eastern part of Pennsylvania to the western part, which is now Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The original plan was for the railroad yards to be built at the newly acquired site. However, it was decided to build the railroad yards in Derry, and Mr. Barnes elected to keep the Kirkland farm for himself. Reimbursing the railroad, Barnes laid out the streets and lots for a new town, which he named after his longtime friend and associate, Benjamin Latrobe. Benjamin Latrobe was the son of Benjamin Henry Latrobe, who was the grand architect for the U.S. Capitol. His grandfather, Ben Latrobe, was a Huguenot in France who had fled to Great Britain when Louis XIV was persecuting French Protestants known as Huguenots. 3 years after Thomas Kirk sold his farm, in 1854, Latrobe was incorporated as a borough, and a meeting held in the home of David Williams on June 17, 1854, the first council was organized, and David L. McCulloch was elected the first burgess of Latrobe. Barnes had donated 3 acres of ground to the railroad for his station, a water tower, and a hotel. He then established the Pennsylvania Car Works, Latrobe's first manufacturing enterprise at the time, and Latrobe's proximity to both the railroad and the Loyalhanna Creek gave rise almost immediately to other industries, such as a paper mill, tanneries, distilleries, and breweries. The discovery of coal in the region led to more industrial growth, with little towns sprouting up around Latrobe, such as Bradenville, Dorothy Patch, Bagley, and many others as well. And with the establishment, more industrial growth and brickyards and foundries also prop up in the region. Education became a priority for the new town, and in 1856, Latrobe's first Little Red School was built on Main Street. 25 years later, the first high school in the area was built on the same site. This school stood for the Greater Latrobe School District up until its demolition in the 2010s. In 1870, St. Vincent College began granting degrees to its students, and the first decade of Latrobe's existence brought houses of worship for a variety of denominations. The United Presbyterian Congregation, the first in Latrobe, was formed in 1853, 1 year before the borough was incorporated. It was followed by the Holy Family Catholic Church and Methodist Church in 1856. The First Presbyterian Church, then still a mission of the Unity Presbyterian Church in 1857, and the Reformed Church in 1860. During the Civil War, due to its small population size and remoteness, Latrobe, unlike Pittsburgh at the time, was largely unaffected by Robert E. Lee's campaign into Pennsylvania in 1863, although trains from Pittsburgh carrying arms and supplies passed through Latrobe on its way to Gettysburg to help the Union fend off Robert E. Lee's invasion. The town's early residents had found time for fun after the 1860s. Latrobe's first venture in the field of drama was the Showalter Theater, built on Depot Street in 1882. The first modern two-wheel bike was introduced to Latrobe in 1891, and it wasn't long until bike clubs were formed. From 1895 until 1909, Latrobe was home to the Latrobe Athletic Association, one of the earliest professional football teams. The team's quarterback, John Brawler, became the first professional football player to admit playing for money. In 1895, he accepted $10 and expenses to play for Latrobe and a 12-0 victory over the Jeannette Athletic Club. Brawler was thought to be the first professional football player until 1960, when it was then that documents had surfaced showing that William Pudge Heffelfinger, a three-time All-American from Yale, was employed to play guard for the Allegheny Athletic Association 3 years earlier. And in 1897, Latrobe was the first football team to play a full season with a team composed entirely of professional football players. And in 1898, Latrobe and two players from their rivals, the Greensburg Athletic Association, formed the very first professional football all-star team for a game against the Duquesne Country and Athletic Club to be played at the Pittsburgh Exposition Park. This team would be the first instance of a pro ball football team and the precursor to the Pro Bowl known from the NFL. Duquesne went on to win that game, though, 16-0, and on November 18th, 1905, Latrobe defeated the Canton Bulldogs, which became later the founding member and two-time champion of the National Football League, 6-0. Aside from Brawler, the Latrobe Athletic Association included several of the area's top players, such as Ed Adebayo, Charles Barney, Alf Bull, Jack Gass, Walter O'Keeson, Harry Ryan, Doggy Trenchard, Eddie Wood, and manager Dave Barry. The 1900s continued to show steadily growth in Latrobe. The borough grew to 6 wards as more areas of Derry and Unity townships were incorporated into the borough. The DeSalvo train station was constructed in 1905. Steel companies emerged from the first half of the century. Latrobe Electric Steel, which became later known as Latrobe Steel, Railway Spring Steel, which became known as Standard Steel and later Lehigh Specialty Melting, Vanadium Alloys, McKenna Metals, and Vulcan Mold as well. Brickyards and distilleries continued to flourish. In addition to a woolen mill, a ceramics factory, and even a mattress factory was built in Latrobe. Coal mines, steel mills, and railroads were major employers in Latrobe, along with a steadily growing variety of businesses and stores in downtown Latrobe. During the first half of the century, Latrobe began to attract national and international attention. In 1904, Latrobe became home of the banana split when David Strickler, a young pharmacist working at Tassel's Pharmacy on Ligonier Street, invented the popular treat. The population of Latrobe continued to grow as more and more European legal immigrants, particularly the Irish, the German, the Italian, the Polish, the Russian and Slovak immigrants, were attracted by the employment opportunities in the area. To serve this growing population, the Latrobe Area Hospital was built in 1909, and a new high school was built on Ligonier Street in 1914. A tall building was constructed in downtown Latrobe by Bartholomew and Smith to house a new bank, which became the Mellon Bank. Later, it became the Citizens Bank, and then later on in the 21st century housed the Cotrini and Associates Attorney at Law business. A public library was established in 1927, and in the 1930s and 40s saw the beginnings of recreation programs to serve the community. Patriotism bounded during the World Wars, and during World War I, after the sinking of Lusitania, the United States joined the war. Company M from Latrobe distinguished itself during World War I. During World War II, the town gave a hero's send-off to its young men and women into the induction of the armed forces. Crowds lined the street as future soldiers marched through downtown to the railroad station, where they would depart. After they returned home, they were given a hero's welcome home after the war was over in 1945. Another first for Latrobe occurred in 1939, and on May 12th, the first nonstop airmail pickup was made at Latrobe Airport. In the 1950s, the town brought more recognition with two of the most famous sons embarked on their careers, the first of which was Fred Rogers, who made his debut on public television, and his children program known as Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. During that time, later in the 60s and 70s, PBS was losing funding and needed funding to continue its programming. So Mr. Rogers, in order to keep his program online, he went to Congress and lobbied for more funding to keep PBS operational so he could continue to air his Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for children to watch and love his show. Another legend, known as Arnold Palmer, loved golf and inspired a loyal following that became known as Arnie's Army. And on December 12, 1951, the first radio station in Latrobe went online as WAKU 1570. This AM station had a call sign which later changed to WSHH, and then more well known as WQTW. One of the first buildings that housed the station on 348 Main Street caught fire, and the station went dark for about a year and a half before it was moved to another building, which a new tower was erected. WQTW generates 1,000 watts of power in its broadcasting, and in 1956, WTRA 1480 went online and served the Latrobe area. Its call sign was later changed to WCNS and served as the radio home for the Latrobe Wildcats, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Pittsburgh Pirates. For a number of years, it had a home to different facilities around Latrobe, including the historic Miller Hotel, which burned to the ground in 1974. When WCNS moved to its new home, where it currently sits today, it is known for its 24-hour Westmoreland News Talk service. The second half of the 20th century showed a period of consolidation and dispersal. The industries in the region contended to consolidate. Private and local ownership passed to large out-of-town conglomerates and corporations. Some of these mills had moved overseas to places like China and Mexico. However, many small high-tech industries moved into the area, such as Kennametal and Westmoreland Mechanical and Technical Research. The Greater Latrobe schools had also consolidated, as the Unity Township, Youngstown, and Latrobe Borough schools emerged in 1962 to form the Greater Latrobe School District. The population of the borough reached its peak in 1960 with 11,932 people. In 1970s, the series of disasters would strike the Latrobe area, most notably in 1972 when the remnants of Hurricane Agnes flooded the town and prompted action to dredge the local Loyalhanna Creek so that Latrobe would never flood again. Numerous historic buildings would burn to the ground due to either arson or accidents from the 1970s and the 1980s, which would shape the future of the town forever. In 1978, a devastating blizzard rocked the Latrobe region and paralyzed the town and the area around the Laurel Highlands. And in the 1980s, a series of derechos devastated the region, and tornadoes spawned from these derechos, like the F5 tornado that devastated the town of Wheatfield, PA. In 1998, a serial derecho blew up across the region, spawning 19 tornadoes. But one bright spot of the 90s, however, was Latrobe being finally incorporated as a city before the year 2000. But by the year 2000, the number of residents had declined. This number declined below 9,000 people, and during this same period, the population of the outlying Unity Township increased. Businesses and services in the downtown area were reduced, but several shopping centers and businesses just outside Latrobe began to prop up. Like in 2004, Walmart became operational and served the community unto this day. In the early 2000s, the Rolling Rock Town Fair was organized by the Rolling Rock and Latrobe Brewing Company and attracted bands such as Godsmack, Nickelback, Seven Dust, Stained, POD, as well as many others, and it attracted fans from around the world to crowd into a small area of the Westmoreland County Fairgrounds. By 2005, however, Anheuser-Busch bought the Rolling Rock brand, and the brewery changed hands from the 2000s to the 2010s. By 2005, Latrobe Walmart had run at full capacity with its superstore. With the first among many in the Westmoreland County area, it would serve as an example to all those who come after it. In 2008, Latrobe Steel's union workers went on strike to demand a fair contract than the owners of the company had proposed at the time. The Latrobe Steel was eventually bought out by Carpenter Technology in 2012. Carpenter Technology, which has its headquarters in Reading, which moved to Philadelphia in 2016. It bought Latrobe Steel in 2012 for nearly $600 million, and in 2010 saw another round of disasters and major attention on the news. In 2010, Snowmageddon was considered the worst snowstorm Latrobe had seen since the 1993 storm of the century, where stories of firemen were digging out fire hydrants that were buried under 2 feet of snow. Also in 2011, a locally dubbed named the Fort Allen Storm devastated the Westmoreland County region with an EF2 tornado wreaking havoc all across Hempfield Township. The same storm also dumped golf ball-sized hail in Latrobe and high winds. In its aftermath, When that storm moved off, very strong northwesterly winds howled the area, and gusts were so bad that dozens of buildings across the city had major and significant roof damage. In 2012, Superstorm Sandy struck the region with high winds and a lot of rain. The Loyalhanna Creek just became with a few feet of cresting near the downtown area, and if it had done so, it would have been catastrophic for sure. The troubles didn't end there, and in early 2013, a string of fires plagued the town, which destroyed a bar, an apartment complex, and the Legion Keener Park facility known as Playland. In July of 2013, a nearly 18-hour standoff between Scott Murphy and a heavily armed Special Emergency Response Team of the Pennsylvania State Police gained national attention, which began on Thursday evening and continued to the early part Friday afternoon. This standoff, which first aired on WTAE Channel 4, became later national attention when it aired on Fox News and CNN as well. This standoff ended on Friday, however, with the suspect dead and the state police officer wounded. The suspect was wanted for an armed robbery of a drugstore on Lincoln Road earlier that day. In August 2013, a great deluge occurred, and it dumped 3 inches of rain in a span of 15 minutes. Flooding devastated the region following that deluge. This great deluge flooded roads, streams, homes, and offices all around Latrobe. The subsequent sewer system had a very difficult time keeping up with the drainage that made flooding in areas that usually don't normally see flooding experience it firsthand in places like Raymond Avenue, which normally sits on a hill but had tremendous amounts of flooding. And in 2015, Latrobe opened its WCCC campus in downtown Latrobe. In 2017, work is being done to build a new elementary school to controversially replace the aging elementary school that originally built in 1914. Latrobe is home to many notable people, such as Dr. Greg Forbes, the meteorologist and severe weather expert of the Weather Channel, who was also known for helping Ted Fujita develop the Fujita scale, and he later enhanced it to form the Enhanced Fujita scale. Other notables also include Daniel Lentz, who is a classical composer, Chris Lightcap, who is a jazz bassist, Jackie Mason, who is a comedian and an actor, Joe Page, who is a major league pitcher, Arnold Palmer, who is a professional golfer, Fred Rogers, host of the PBS series Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Boniface Swimmer, who is a Benedict monk at St. Vincent College, who founded it in 1845, Dennis Ferry, who is a trumpeter for the Orchestra di La Susi Raimondi, and Keith Ferrazzi, who is a best-selling author, Eric Schwartz for the Wall Street Journal, Alexandria Naples, who is the lead singer of the rock band Love Betty, and BJ Sarnice, who is the drummer of the heavy metal band Kamakabi. Latrobe is also home to the Pittsburgh Steelers training camp at St. Vincent College. The college at the end of July hosts the Steelers players as they practice to train for the upcoming seasons. It is worth noting that many famous celebrities had paid this camp a visit. Such notable celebrities include the great John Madden and Al Michaels. Other celebrities that visited the training camp who were fans of the Steelers include people such as Pittsburgh Dad, Shawn Michaels Hickenbottom, who was a professional wrestler, and Steelers celebrities fans as well, such as Bret Michaels, Garth Brooks, Burt Reynolds, Kurt Schilling, Hank Williams Jr., Billy Gardell, Anthony Jeselnik, Jake Gyllenhaal, January Jones, Jim Furyk, Reggie Jackson, Jimmy Johnson, John Grisham, Kurt Angle, Michael Hayden, Michael Keaton, Rush Limbaugh, Kate Mara, Seth Meyers, Jeff Goldblum, Zachary Quinto, Joe Manganiello, Sofia Vergara, Ming-Na Wen, and many others as well. In the entertainment industry, the city of Latrobe was also mentioned in many movies and TV shows. In 1968 cult classic Night of the Living Dead, Latrobe was given an honorable mention as a sanctuary to escape the undead. Latrobe was also featured as a place where a state trooper stopped a fugitive who was wanted for breaking out of prison in the episode Scan of the TV series Prison Break. Latrobe would also be featured on the show Quantum Leap and also on the murder mystery documentary Dear Zachary about a murder that occurred in Keystone State Park. And finally, the trademark Latrobe Brewing Company could be found in a bar scene from the movie Gone Girl. We fast forward to 2017. During this year, in 2017, many new projects had been proposed and implemented in Latrobe, such as the work on the Kennemetal Bridge, the revitalization projects in downtown Latrobe to restore many historical buildings to pristine condition, such as the Mozart House and the Columbus Building. Due to work on the Kennemetal Bridge, Latrobe had to change the parade route for the second time in the last 25 years. Latrobe's current mayor is Rosie Marie Wolford and is preparing to serve her second term as mayor, defeating challenger Jack Murtha in the primaries, running uncontested in the general election, which subsequently earns her a second term. The current fire chief is John Brazili and heads a fire department consisting of 5 companies. This department, which began in the late 1800s, first of which has a paid duty driver in its position at Central Station, manning it 24 hours a day. Its police department is led by Chief Boomar. His department has a drug task force and a canine unit that works with other police departments in the county area to combat the overdose epidemic. Regular council meetings for the city are held every second Monday of the month, and citizens are granted a forum to discuss ideas and concerns for their community in hopes to establish good communication and connection between its city and its residents. Well, thank you for watching, and thank you for subscribing. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel, Iron Tusk 341, where you may be updated, uploading a new documentary, and please hit that alert button next to my subscribe button, where you could be alerted on your mobile phone when I uploaded a new video. Again, thank you for watching. This is Iron Tusk 341.